All right, let's jump right in. You've got two global superpowers, the United States and China, and they are both completely, utterly fixated on this one small island. It's a showdown that could really define our century, and we're going to break down exactly why Taiwan is at the center of it all.
So you gotta ask, right? How did this happen? How on earth did an island of 23 million people become what so many experts are calling the most dangerous flashpoint on the planet? Well, to get it, you really have to start with the map.
And this is where geography becomes destiny. Look, Taiwan sits right in the middle of what military folks call the first island chain. Just picture a kind of strategic fence stretching from Japan down through Taiwan all the way to the Philippines. For the US and its allies, that fence contains China's navy and keeps shipping lanes open. But for Beijing, it's a cage, blocking their military from getting out into the wide-open Pacific. And Taiwan? Well, that's the most important link in that whole chain.
To really understand today, we need a super quick history lesson. Taiwan's fate has pretty much always been decided by bigger powers. It was lost to Japan, then handed back after World War II, but the game-changing moment was 1949. That's when Mao Zedong's communists won the civil war on the mainland. The losing side, the nationalists, fled to Taiwan. And boom, suddenly you've got two governments. This whole two Chinas problem was kind of locked in place in '79 when the US officially recognized Beijing but kept its unofficial friendship with Taipei.
And this right here is the root of the whole political mess. You have two governments. The People's Republic of China, in Beijing, which sees Taiwan as just a breakaway province that has to come back. And then you have the Republic of China, on Taiwan, which has grown into its own vibrant, separate democracy. It is the unfinished business of a civil war from over 70 years ago.
So, with that history as the backdrop, let's really dig into what's driving these two rivals today. I mean, what are the deep-down reasons for this obsession? Let's start with Beijing.
For Beijing, this is so much more than just a piece of land. Unification, as they call it, is framed as the final chapter in ending a century of foreign interference and achieving this grand national rejuvenation. It's about history, it's about breaking out of that island chain to project power, and honestly, it's a huge part of the Communist Party's claim to legitimacy.
And don't just take my word for it. This quote absolutely nails the official position. The message is just crystal clear. Reunification isn't an if, it's a when. And they've made it plain that they are willing to do it by force if they have to. In their eyes, it's inevitable.
Okay, so that's Beijing. But why is Washington so deeply invested? Well, first off, it's about credibility. If the US didn't stand by Taiwan, what would allies like Japan or South Korea think about their own security guarantees? Then there's the big principle. You can't just let powerful countries change borders by force. And of course, there's the powerful idea of one democracy supporting another against immense pressure.
And this statement from a US senator really shows you the flip side of the coin. The American view frames Taiwan not as some breakaway province, but as a vital, respected partner. It's a perspective that's just a world away from Beijing's, and that clash in worldview is what makes this so dangerous.
All right, let's shift gears. We've talked history and politics, but the modern conflict, the battlefield of today, it's really about two things: the tiniest, most complex pieces of tech ever made, and some of the biggest warships sailing the seas. Let this number sink in for a minute. 90%. That's the share of the world's most advanced semiconductors that are made in Taiwan. Not just some of them, not even most of them, over 90%. And the thing is, these chips are literally the brains of our entire world. They're in your phone, in your car, they run the cloud, they're the engine of AI, and they're inside the most advanced military gear. This makes Taiwan's economy absolutely essential to everyone, but it also makes it an unbelievable vulnerability. It's a single point of failure for the entire global economy. At the exact same time this is happening, China's military has been growing at a frankly terrifying speed. The PLA Navy is now the world's largest in terms of ship numbers. They've built a massive arsenal of missiles specifically designed to keep the US Navy at bay and to hit targets in Taiwan. The balance of power in Asia has totally, fundamentally shifted.
So, if you're a small island, how do you defend yourself against a giant? Well, you become a porcupine. That's the second key analogy here. The whole idea isn't to win a war against China in the traditional sense. It's to make yourself so spiky, so painful, and so costly to attack, with things like mobile missile launchers, sea mines, and swarms of drones, that Beijing might just decide it's not worth the price. You know, a conflict probably wouldn't start with some giant D-Day style invasion out of the blue. Analysts think it's way more likely to escalate in stages.
It could start with something like a naval blockade to try and starve the island of supplies, or maybe seizing some of Taiwan's tiny offshore islands first. These are moves designed to create a crisis and test America's resolve without immediately starting World War III.
Look, this all sounds incredibly tense, and that's because it is. So the really big question is, why is everything getting so much worse now? And is there anything at all that can be done to head off a complete catastrophe?
The reason tensions are so high is because we're stuck in this dangerous action-reaction cycle. China sends jets and warships near Taiwan almost daily, trying to make it the new normal. The US and its allies respond with their own military exercises. Every move leads to a countermove. Then you throw the high-stakes tech war over those chips into the mix, and you have a perfect storm for a disastrous miscalculation.
And that brings up a huge knowledge gap for all of us. We talk a lot about the US and China, but what about the neighbors who are right there in the line of fire? A war over Taiwan would be an existential threat to countries like Japan and the Philippines. How are they getting ready? What would they actually do? That's a really critical question to dig into next.
So are there any off-ramps here? How do we pull back from the edge? Well, experts usually point to a few key things. First, you need reliable communication, like military hotlines, so an accident doesn't spiral into a war. Second, you build resilience, like you don't have 90% of your most important chips coming from one place. And third, you make sure the defense is strong enough to make any aggression look like a horribly bad idea, while always leaving a door open for talks.
At the end of the day, Taiwan is where it all comes together. You have this clash of national identity, of critical geography, of military might, and of the technology that will power our future. Both Washington and Beijing see the fate of this island as absolutely fundamental to their own futures. And that leaves us with the final, really sobering question: is this a crisis that can actually be solved, or is it just one that we're trying to postpone for as long as we possibly can?